Kelly, you want to go ahead?
Go ahead and call the meeting to order, 9:04. And everyone's received a copy of the minutes from our last meeting. If I could get a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those approve the minutes as they are written, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We've got the of the AHAC local housing incentive strategies already in place. Is that you, Jeff?
Yes, ma'am. So we've got, you can go ahead with the presentation. We're going to do a presentation. I'll cover the first part, and then Marcy will get the last part on inclusionary zoning. As we go through this, this will be our last meeting before the public hearing. This is the AHAC responsibility. I'm not going to read it all, but basically we need to get you guys to debate or discuss any incentive strategies that you'd like to see included in our report to the board. Our local housing assistance plan will go into effect July 1. That will be sent off to the state, hopefully by the end of this week, for them to start their review. And then we will bring that once they have reviewed it and made any changes or suggestions for changes. We'll bring that to the commission for their approval, probably late May, early June. And part of the LHAP will be your report on incentive strategies. So we're going to look at some of these today. Going to have planning also put their work in on it as well. And so one of the incentive strategies that's required is to process approvals of development orders or permits for flexible housing projects, or I'm sorry, for affordable housing projects, and they are expedited to the greatest degree possible. Pasco County currently does have a process in place for affordable housing to be expedited. Permitting moves it through a little quicker than other projects. Any zoning or anything like that, if it can be, it is expedited. We have met planning and community development to work together to kind of streamline this process, the workflow of it. So we're currently doing that. Marcy and I had a call with Sunid last week on this. And Marcy, jump in anytime. The modification of impact fee requirements is another incentive strategy to look at, and you can include a reduction or waiver of those fees and alternate methods of that payment process for affordable housing. So mobility fees are waived for anything that is affordable housing. It's designated as 80% of the income for the SHIP area. Basically, those 80% are under income. The project is designated as affordable. Talking with planning, there's also projects for age 50 that have school impact fees waived. So that's something else to keep in mind for the elderly housing. And I know, Jimmy, I think you had talked about that before.
Yes.
Was that? Yeah. So that's an advantage for that. This is in place for both single family and affordable or multifamily units and projects. And the property does need to be maintained as affordable. The owner developer could be subject to having to pay back the normal mobility fees if they don't keep it as affordable. So that's one of the incentives. Other incentives in that would be things like the impact fees, but that comes through the school board. So that would be something we would have to have them agree to do, to waive. So long-range planning is looking at the policies for flexible densities. Sorry, I'll spit that out. This is still kind of something that's up in place in the land development code, that the rewrite that they're going through right now. Sunid, do you have anything on that?
More than that, no, not right now.
Okay.
Not right now. It's actually going through comprehensive plan updates.
Okay, so as the AHAC, if you want to recommend that as a strategy that we try to implement, you're more than welcome to do that. We'll leave that up for discussion when we get done. And again, then you have the affordable accessory residential units, the ADUs, in the residential area. And I think long-range planning is also looking at that.
That one is, we're just waiting for the direction from the top now.
Okay, so that one's also something being looked at, and that's an incentive strategy that you can make recommendations on also. The reduction of the parking and the setback requirements for affordable housing. This can be done. The developer would need to specify that they don't need, or that the project is in an area that doesn't need the required parking, perhaps reduce it by, instead of 2 spots, down to 1 spot, something like that. This is done on case by case, and there is a process through alternative standards if the project is near some sort of transit stop bus or something like that. The more dense areas where people are able to walk, or you have better public transportation, probably are more suited to this than the more rural areas. And it does require approvals, actually requires 2 public hearings.
Excuse me, Jeff, I have
Yep.
a question. So is that 2 public hearings with the Planning Commission or the BOCC?
So Sneak, can you answer that?
This is the vote of the planning commission.
Okay,
I'll correct it if I'm incorrect, but if I remember correctly, that's the planning commission.
okay.
Okay. So that's another strategy again. This is the flexible lot configurations, including the 0 lot line for affordable housing. And the master planned development classification is available. So Need was telling me though that this is not cheap to do, but it is an option the developer can look at.
It would probably be an opportunity cost of that.
They'd have to weigh the cost benefit of it. Okay, so that's another strategy that you can look at in what is in place right now. The street requirements, the land development code does have provisions for this. Developers can request this, and again, that would be something that would be approved through the permitting process.
This one's a little tricky because of the types of streets that we have. So I think this question and what our team had said was this question is a bit vague, especially in a Pasco context, because when we're talking about right-of-ways, when we're talking about our roads that have, what are they called, substandard roads, they all have a different story and their costs have a different cost to it. So they were saying we probably have to ask a deeper question if we wanted to. So that's why we couldn't really get the best response for it. But it all depends on the type of streets that we're talking about.
So kind of where everything would be located versus rural versus commercial, those sort of things. Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Jeff.
Yep.
Sunid, so would it be even bigger requirements then, say if you were doing something on US 19 and SR 54 then too, because you've got federal and state involved then as well? Okay.
Okay. And so this is basically that there's an ongoing review of policies, procedures, ordinances, that sort of thing. And that is in place. Pasco County does continue to do that on an ongoing basis. Things are reviewed. Land Development Code is going right now as one. The planning and the board is looking at different alternatives and options for apartment complexes in the 54 area. And so that's something that's been going on. So that's already in place. So the supportive development near transportation hubs and major employment centers and mixed use, the comprehensive plan attempts to guide that. It's in place now. We're encouraging development into the corridors where the infrastructure is already, and that way you can have the mixed use, housing, business, pleasure, those sort of things all together.
Can I ask a question here? And
Yep.
Marcy, this is Commissioner Starkey. I think Marcy, well, there was a planning commission meeting this week where we have an employment center on 52, and our planning department appeared to be fine with letting them do away with the affordable housing component, and it really alarmed me. I think we need to strongly encourage affordable housing and employment centers, not allow them to do away with that provision.
Commissioner, yes, absolutely agree. And we can bring, the AHAC can bring that to the board's attention when we present the report. And either staff, Kelly, yourself, Marcy can testify to that a little more at the board meeting. I'll let Marcy go. I can see she's ready.
Commissioner, you always have a way of putting me on the spot. Thank you so much. I know she's laughing. Community development had an opportunity to comment on that project going forward, and they asked me what I felt about them taking away the affordable housing language, and I disagreed with it. And I said that our strategic plan has a goal to increase the number of mixed-use, mixed-income housing developments, and that anything that we do to take affordable housing out of it would then be it would be anti-strategic plan, really. And so I believe they presented that as an alternative view. But Commissioner, I also heard, as did you, that they said historically they have allowed affordable housing to be taken out of every MPUD that has come forward.
And that is scary.
Stunning.
Stunning. Agreed.
Yes.
And
in a recent,
go ahead.
I just want to say that so I am working with planning and development. We're all busy at work with our new strategic plan, where the goal is there once again. And so I'm sitting there in meetings advocating, well, if we really want to have mixed income, mixed use properties, this is when it starts. And maybe we should be asking every developer, with the residential units you're doing, what market you're going to raise awareness, because you could give me, and thank you for doing that, give me all the money to go build affordable housing, but building affordable housing on its own does not create a mixed income community. And we all know that a best practice is to integrate it, and we're going to be talking about inclusionary zoning. So anyhow, it was recommended that after we do the strategic plan, and along with doing the comprehensive plan, that the county actually goes forward and adopts a housing plan. So the plans that we have in our office are kind of siloed to our grants, like the plan that we're doing right now. They're really for SHIP, and then we have a plan that we do for our HUD money. And so they're specific to our grants. But if we put together a housing plan for the county and stress this mixed income, mixed use, of the priority of affordable housing, then they feel as if we have some teeth to back up maintaining affordable housing in all these projects that go forward.
Yeah, I recall that when we had DRIs, a certain percentage had to be affordable housing. And I think when we got away from DRIs, then they started abandoning affordable housing in the county.
Yeah, we, so again, in a few minutes, we'll talk a little bit about inclusionary zoning, but But there's gonna be a larger conversation, Commissioner, and you know as well as I do that I'm not sure where the politics are gonna come on this one. The bottom line though is, especially in our housing market now, and I'm looking at our housers in front of us, that the market has gotten very, very hot and very, very tight, and the disparity between market rate and what needs to be affordable is going to grow even larger. And we're behind the curve, so we really do need to get ahead of the curve with more units being built.
Okay, we'll go on to the next one is preparation of a printed inventory of locally available housing that the county would have, surplus properties. And Pasco County does have a listing of surplus properties on the website that they no longer need. The county also has investment in other properties that could potentially be suitable for affordable housing. That would be something the board would direct as well. And so we maintain that list. It's on the website. So that is, that will be part of the plan going forward. And then I'm going to let Marcy do the inclusionary zoning.
Yeah. So I will get started with inclusionary zoning, but I would like to suggest, because I'm not quite sure where we're going to go after this, is that these areas that are going to be worked on through the comprehensive plan, that in our report to the board and then to the Florida Housing Finance Agency, that we make a recommendation that we support the work that's being done in the comprehensive plan to consider density bonuses, accessory dwelling units, the several things. I'm trying to think what else, but specifically those two things, that we make sure that so we don't run into a situation where 4 years down the line they say, well, since we didn't have the recommendation of the affordable housing people, then we didn't pursue it. So we want to make sure that those are connected. Commissioner Starkey, to your point, one of the ways that communities around the country ensure that affordable housing is developed in their community is with an inclusionary housing or an inclusionary zoning ordinance. So those are policies that support the delivery of affordable housing integrated with a community. And affordable, of course, means to serve low and moderate income persons, usually 80% or below, but sometimes you could go 120% below. And zoning are the land use policy requirements that deliver affordable housing outcomes as a condition of a development. And I think that's what you were getting at with the DRIs. But literally, if a developer comes in and says, I'm going to build 100 units, that sometimes there's policies in place or zoning ordinances in place that say, okay, well, if you're going to build 100 units, 10% of those have to be affordable, or 15% or something like that. So I want to play this video. How do I go about doing that?
She looks over.
Give us a minute.
So this is what I do in my house, because it's become so confusing with TVs and remotes. So I just say, can you turn the TV on for me?
Cities are rebounding all across the country after struggling for decades to attract new investment. Yet in nearly every corner of America, communities are concerned with what seems to be a growing crisis.
Are you going to share it on the screen? Sorry, we can't see it.
Sorry.
wasted billions of tax dollars to improve struggling neighborhoods. It worked, but one result is housing prices are rising rapidly. Many people who work so hard to make our cities places we want to live can no longer afford to live in them. This pattern is not going to change on its own. So more and more communities are consciously promoting mixed income development through inclusionary housing programs. These inclusionary policies require builders of market rate housing to include some units the local workforce can own or rent. Here's how it works. Imagine a developer is building a 100-unit apartment building. A local inclusionary housing ordinance requires 15 of the new apartments to be rented to lower or middle income residents. 15 homes won't solve the housing crisis, but over time, as whole neighborhoods redevelop, inclusionary policies create more economically integrated neighborhoods. Providing affordable housing in market rate buildings might reduce a building's profitability, but research shows modest inclusionary requirements don't result in higher rents or less development. Inclusionary housing is rapidly becoming a common part of the housing landscape. Over 500 communities have adopted local policies. It's working in big cities, small cities, and suburban communities across the country. It works best in places with healthy housing markets, development, and rising costs. Inclusionary housing won't meet all our affordable housing needs. It's not likely to ever eliminate the demand for federal affordable housing subsidies. But as affordable housing becomes more and more critical, adopting an inclusionary housing policy is one thing local communities can do to make a real difference.
So I thought this video really just gave a good basic introduction to inclusionary zoning. So let's go on. The purpose of inclusionary zoning.
You're good.
Okay. Is to increase the supply of low and moderate income units. And this would be used for both rental and home ownership units. And actually, I'm going to show you an example from a community that's well known for its most successful inclusionary zoning. So it helps facilitate diversity and combats NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And I want to say that while the video talked about economic diversity because you're talking about low and moderate income, I also will say, so when I came from Burlington, Burlington's inclusionary zoning was more about diversity. It was more about making sure that that neighborhoods were diverse. And I tend to think in our current environment and in the future that that might be a renewed focus in inclusionary zoning. So it could be voluntary. We could, have incentives to say, we encourage you to do this. And if you do this, you'll get this. Or it could be mandatory. If you want to build, then you have to do such and such. So you're either going to do a carrot or you're going to do a stick. And in addition to creating new units, I think it's important, and I'll bring this back around at the end, to really talk about that it can also reduce the housing cost burden that for households that are paying more than 30% of their income on housing, which we know is one of the serious things here in Pasco County, with 51% of the households being cost burdened in our county. So here's an example of voluntary versus mandatory. So voluntary, it's a partnership between the private and public sectors. The developer can make a choice. We could include it, we could not include it. And then the incentives are usually there. And so those are some of the incentives that we're talking about actually in our incentive plan. Density bonuses, reduced development fees, fast track approvals. And developers want a guarantee. So for example, let's say the developer is in a zoning where he or she knows that they can do 25 units, but if they agree to do affordable, they could have a higher density and do 40 units. And they will want to know that that's guaranteed. They don't want to have to go through a whole process. And then at the end, they still say, we're not giving you that density bonus. And then they would be more flexible with the set aside. So, you know, you might say 10% have to be affordable or 15% or 5%, depending, because it's voluntary. So you might be more flexible. Yes, Jimmy.
For incentivizing, why not include tax credits to the developer? A certain amount of tax credits that they have to stay in compliance a certain amount of years, just like any tax credit program, but this is a little different. It's just incentivizing them. Tax credits, it's like free money. If you stay in compliance.
But who has, so I'm only familiar, this is not my area of expertise, of the tax credits that come in through the state. So are those tax credits available to anybody?
Through investors.
Okay.
And now in this low interest rate environment with taxes going up, there's going to be a huge demand for tax credits. Everybody wins. The section 42 of the IRS code. Everybody wins with tax credits.
I'm glad that he brought that comment because that was precisely what was going through my mind. I was thinking when I was reading about the incentives, it seems to me from the perspective of the builder, all the incentives are upfront in the very beginning. What is the ongoing incentive for them to continue keeping these units affordable? And low-income tax credit would be one because they're required to certify those units on an annual basis.
That's excellent.
We'll look into that. And then the other option is mandatory, and that would be, I think that your mandatory programs are your the really reflective of a political will of the community and probably the harder lift. I know that I worked on this for about 3 years in Collier County and it never went through. So it would be legislated either by the state or the municipality, a precondition of building, and Commissioner Starkey has given those examples already. It's often met with resistance, we want to make sure that we don't do something that has unintended consequences. So to create a policy, then people choose not to develop in the county would not be what where we want to go. And one way to mitigate kind of some of this resistance is to partner with a nonprofit partner or agency. And I know that a lot of for-profit developers are uncomfortable doing affordable housing because they've never done that before. They've never had to income qualify people. That's not their cup of tea. So sometimes they could take a track and perhaps, partner with one of the nonprofit developers that we have in the county. And then with mandatory, the set-asides are higher because they're more specified. So here's an example of a successful program, and I spent about an hour looking and I couldn't find it because Montgomery County in Maryland is well known as being one of the most successful inclusionary zoning programs in the country. And in the past 35 years, and this is 10 years old, so I didn't see the figures updated, 13,000 units. And they have erred more on ownership versus rental. And I will say that the key to everything that I read about in my research about inclusionary zoning, and as a matter of fact, while I was in Vermont, we had our inclusionary zoning program reviewed by consultants, and this was one of the things that they gave us could have done better on, and that is the monitoring and the administrative part of inclusionary zoning. So it's all well and good to get the units on board, but somebody somewhere, and I'm looking at us because these things always wind up in our shop, somebody's got to watch it and maintain it and make sure that those units are being continued to be used as affordable, and that is the downside of that. And so, for example, in an ownership program, when the unit is sold, you have to make sure that it's being sold to somebody who qualifies. So it has an administrative burden that is often not funded, through the program. And it's definitely something to consider. So they did involve the nonprofit sector, and the nonprofit sector had set the lease and ownership criteria, and they also got the first right of refusal when things were up for sale and things like that. It could go to the nonprofit first. They had different income tiers for different populations, which makes all the sense, and the same thing with different layers of subsidies. The density bonus was varied depending on the population, and the ownership units, these were the two caveats, the ownership units had to remain affordable for at least 30 years and rentals for 99 years. And I know that in my office, my predecessor has done some of this on an individual basis, but it wasn't consistent. And it was not maintainable. Administratively, it was not maintainable. And I really do want to stress that there is an administrative burden to this. So what about fees in lieu of? This is a very common part of an inclusionary zoning ordinance, is they'll provide an out. So, a developer comes in, and for the example, I want to do 100 units and 10 of them have to be affordable. They say, nah, that's not really my cup of tea. I don't want to do that. So a payment in lieu gives them an out to buy their way out of the ordinance, to pay a fee. And so the key is that fee enough for them to develop, for a nonprofit developer to develop a unit? Usually it's not. So if it's too low, then every developer is going to buy their way out of it. And so that money goes into an affordable housing trust fund, and maybe you could try to use it sometime, but it would really take a while to add it up. And if it's too high, then you get again, an opting out. We're really not interested. We'll go and develop somewhere else. Another option that I've seen in inclusionary zoning ordinances, and I've seen this actually happen, is where they provide land elsewhere to build affordable or assist a nonprofit developer to develop. I didn't catch that one. A developer to developer. So here's the deal. If our bottom line issue is we want more affordable housing and we'll take it any which way we'll get it, then, that's a reasonable option. But if our higher goal is to be inclusive and have mixed income, then that doesn't really help that issue at all. That, again, puts people off to the side. Let's do our affordable over here and not have them mix into a market rate community. So, and that is the downside of the fees in lieu or having land elsewhere. So, as you could tell that many times this is a struggle for me in my affordable housing hat, because in general, I want more affordable housing, but I also know that the highest and best case scenario is mixed income. And so it's a struggle for me. Do I want to make sure that these 77 or 100 units go up affordable? Yes. Would I prefer 10 units affordable in 10 different developments? Absolutely. So here's the deal, and I've heard this over and over again, and just the past couple of weeks, and so I had to go back and do research, because what I heard was, the Florida legislator passed a bill, and so we can no longer mandate. This is for you, Commissioner Starkey. We can no longer mandate having affordable housing in these developments, and that is. That doesn't tell the whole story. I'll put it that way. So here's the deal with this bill. It was in 2019. What they did was they they said that under a new law, local governments must now fully offset all costs to a developer when those costs result in an inclusionary housing ordinance. So they didn't say you can't do it. They didn't say you can't mandate it. What they said was, if you're going to do it and mandate it, you have to fully offset all costs. So it seems like we're using this 100-unit market development a lot, but it's easy to do the math. So let's say there's the 100-unit market development, 10% inclusionary zoning. Then if Pasco had that, then we'd have to fully offset the costs associated with the 10 required affordable housing units. And so again, it doesn't say we can't do it. It says that we have to offset it. And how can we offset it? Well, in many of the ways that we've already talked about. You can do it by density or intensity bonuses. You can reduce or waive fees. You can grant other incentives, tax credits. You can do all those things. Making sure that the upfront zoning raises the value of the developer's property. So, for example, they use the example of going from agriculture to residential use. They'll have an increased value to the land. A rezoning from a zoning category that only allows 5 units an acre to 30 units an acre increases the value of land. So it can be done. And then again, to talk about the funding that's coming in through our office, you know, we could also award state or federal funds to a property project to help offset. So, for example, in this, let's use this, I hesitate to do this, and I'm not seeing my developers, but let's just go with it. So, and I'm going to use easy math. So let's say we're doing 100 units, and really it costs $150,000 to develop each of those units. But the affordable units are going to rent at a much lower amount, so they need to be subsidized. So they're already putting the 150 in, but if it needs to be subsidized lower, then we would take that delta or use those other density bonuses or whatever, so that they're not on the hook for that those additional costs to those additional units. And so it is doable. And I think that it's important in Pasco County that we make sure that we tell that whole story, so it's not doable.
Question, if we're waiving the some of the fees, the transportation fees, mobility fees, does that fall?
Yes, that counts, and that's exactly what we do. So it is possible. That's the bottom line. It is possible, and it shouldn't be just passed off as we shouldn't do this because they say so, because they didn't say that. They just, I think we all have to appreciate the fact that for once the legislator said this isn't an unfunded mandate, right? So they're saying that this is what we're asking to do, but you better make it whole. And I think we could all agree on the principle of that. So I just wanted to bring this back to this and the why. So this is the why behind why we need more affordable housing. And I think that too often we get bogged down on political will, or we get bogged down on really what developers want to do, or all sorts of things. And the market always takes care of itself, but the market does not take care of our low and moderate income persons, and that's what we're called to do. So we have 40% of our Pasco residents that are low and moderate income, and I would keep going if I had my sheets in front of me, but I don't.
We have a tech gremlin.
So 40% of them are 80% or below the median income. 54% of our residents are cost burden and pay more than 30% of their household costs. So this is why we do it. And then my favorite slide from the Schindberg Institute shows how many units that are needed, especially at 60% and below. So if you look at the 0 to 60, there's almost 24,000 households in that income group. And there is, over almost an 8,000 unit need in that income group of so 8,000 units. We do maybe sometimes 50 units a year. So we've got a big gap of need. And these are probably a couple of year old, 2018 statistics. And of course, we never know what's going to happen when the eviction moratorium comes up. So that will be considerably higher. And then the overall continuum, which is what we're discussing here when we talk about inclusionary zoning, when we talk about these set-asides, we're talking about affordable housing and increasing the local housing supply from every end of the spectrum, whether it's very low income supportive housing for people coming out of homelessness, our elderly population, people with special needs or disabilities, affordable rental, not only public housing, but also our people, clerical workers, medical personnel, custodial staff, people that work for the county, our restaurant workers, they all need affordable rental housing. And then going on to the ladder for those that have been successful renters, that we would want them to be able to come into affordable home ownership, and that's shared equity, down payment assistance, the work that we do with Habitat for Humanity. So that's the continuum of what we're talking about, and that is the case for increasing our affordable housing supply.
So I have a question. If there's so much demand, and usually market responds to the demand, what would you say is our number one inhibitor of filling the demand? If you could say there's one thing. Because usually when there's so much demand, the market finds a way to fill it.
Yeah, the problem
There's not a lot of supply.
Supply.
I know, so why are we not getting it's just just throwing it out there. If there's so much demand, why is someone not stepping up to supply?
Right.
To fill the need?
Madam Chair?
Jeff?
Yeah.
I was waiting for him.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And I'm not here to tell you I know all the answers, but I can fill in a lot of those blanks. So like Mike Sutton and other people on the call can talk about the single family version and like how much they sell one of their houses for versus how much a market rate developer would sell that house for, and then all the variables in between. I can tell you on multifamily, it's just numbers. I mean, it's literally numbers. So you have to pay your debt a certain amount a month, every month. You have to pay your equity a certain amount every month. The cost of lumber is going through the roof right now, and these variables go through time, just go up and down all the time, and you're juggling all these things. So as a developer, what you're looking for is stability. You're looking for places you can develop where things are as level as possible. And right now, Pasco County has high impact fees, and a lot of people move into the state right now, all over the state. Tampa Bay is getting a bunch of them. Houses get on the market right now, and they're on the market for a couple hours, and then they're under contract. And the housing, Mike and his group are doing everything they can. The market rate guys are going as fast as they can, and they can't even come close to keeping up with the number of houses and apartments that we need to keep up with the population that's going on. So, I mean, it's really numbers. It all boils down to numbers. When you're talking about the market, it always boils down to numbers. And
it's just interesting that there's such big demand, and So little,
Population's growing
little people
tremendously.
filling the
Hospitals are
demand.
critical. Sorry.
Yeah, I believe that some of it was impacted when COVID hit and there was so much restrictions elsewhere. We were a little bit more flexible, and I believe that a number of people that relocated to our area was, basically seeking a little bit of more freedom because we're having a lot of people coming from up north.
Absolutely.
I have a question. The housing types that we have, does that play a role as well? Because I noticed that we don't have too many options, and I don't know if there's a demand for different types as opposed to single family and then the large apartments that we have. And we have a few of the garden apartments, but do we have a variety, and I don't know if you all know, a variety of housing types here? Because I think that would help as well, no?
So I would think along with housing types, the others is housing requirements. So size of housing. So I do know that in other communities, they're getting into micro apartments and smaller houses, not just ADUs, but that would have to come into the change in the comprehensive plan or the code, because it definitely has to go smaller. And that is also true for inclusionary zoning, because the key with inclusionary zoning is you can't, so you can't be able to say, oh, this is the affordable and it's different. So in order to do that, you have to start with some more flexible sizes, like, a one bedroom at 500 or 700 square feet and a single family home. If you were going to do single family homes at smaller than 1,500 square feet, that would all be important. And one of the things that I was looking for, and I could not find the example, and I will continue to look for it, and if I ever find it again, but I remember a presentation that I had watched on Montgomery County where, use the example of some of these PUDs that are coming out, and the houses are just absolutely beautiful. And they're, 4 bedroom, 3 baths, 4-car garages, and that same type that it looks the same from the outside, and in the inside there's 4 or 5 units in there.
That's the best.
And I just would, I would love to do that, and I would love to find a developer that. And again, that would cost them more money because now you're doing 4 kitchens and you're doing, so it would cost them more money. But it would be our job as a local government is to create some kind of set aside or funding stream so that we would offset the costs of doing that differently.
Well, have we seen the map of the property that Pasco County owns? Has that been given to us yet?
No.
Why? Derek, do you know where that map is? Derek came from real estate, so. Yeah, we asked for an inventory of land owned by Pasco County, and it seems to me.
We have about over 9,000.
Well, I need to see the map, and it seems to me we should be looking at what's on that map and what might be appropriate to put into this pot where people can build affordable housing. I mean, that's the easiest, quickest way we could get something going. If we put in the land, doesn't that lower the developer's cost? And would that be something like a community land trust in a way? And what you had said, maybe we don't want to go down that path, but it seems to me that would be the first easiest thing we should be able to do.
Well, what we could do in a situation like that, Commissioner, is rather than having a formal land trust, we would put a LURA on a land use restriction so that we would build it. We would give the land and say that in order for you to maintain this for, 99 years, it would have to be affordable and you can't sell it. Because the key would be is we wouldn't want it to turn into condominiums, market rate condominiums. Right. So we would put a land use restriction on it and we could do that.
I've also talked to the school district and they have extra land. And I know one place where they have quite a big tract of land. And I'm not for large tracts of affordable housing. I think that's when people start getting upset with affordable housing. But I think we should partner with the school district as well and ask them to inventory land that they may have on any of their sites, they may have an extra acre or a couple of acres that could be very appropriate for some nice looking townhomes or something.
Right.
So, I would suggest that we, make that as
I'll look into that.
a quick
Commissioner,
first
get in
step,
touch
yeah.
with somebody.
Yeah, you
Right
can
there.
talk with Ray Gadd, because I've talked to him about that, and he
Who?
does have some land he's willing to give for affordable housing.
Who was it?
Ray Gadd.
Make
Okay.
a comment about the school board. I had recent conversation with their planning department, and having been the supervisor of planning commissioners, Starkey, we've worked together before on these land deals. We do have like 20 acres off of Hayes Road. That's just a mile out north of 52. We have property off of Shady Hills and Cruise Lake Middle School that doesn't look like it's going to be needed. We have property off of Land Lakes Boulevard for 18 acres that was for future elementary site. So there are parcels, and occasionally we even get donations, or some of these properties can be used in swaps. Some of them could be used for affordable housing for school board employees, which qualify. So Commissioner Stark is exactly right with Deputy Superintendent Gadd that there's several opportunities. We're the biggest employers, and combined with the county of employees that need affordable housing. So that buying power and future buying power, that's the other thing. And we go out 20 years in buying land, not necessarily needing it all or getting it from developers, et cetera. So the recommendation I think we're all trying to make is a closer communication or recommendation of school board planning supervisors to work with county on affordable housing.
Yeah, and I know there's a bunch of land near Anclo High School. And as he said, when a developer has to give a piece of land, the school hasn't necessarily cited the school yet. So very frequently there's leftover pockets. And then as far as the county, what comes to my mind right away, well, one, we have that old fire station on Mile Stretch, which could become a cute little townhouse, 4, 6, 8 units maybe. And then we have all that land outside of Dade City that was supposed to be utilities. We needed 30 acres or 20 acres, and they bought 300. And it's just sitting there. And some of us want to see that part of it be a park, but how nice to have some kind of housing with a park associated to it. So just right off the top of my head, I'm thinking of a property where we can get to work.
Also, too, I'm thinking. Go ahead.
Yes.
Catherine, this is Mark Wickham. I've also spoken with Pasco Hernando State College because they have some properties that they're not using.
Yeah, excellent. So I would convene a meeting of the three of us right away.
Yeah. One of the things that comes to my mind is the HRE team and what they're working on as far as individual lots within established neighborhoods already. And if we could do some single family homes right in there, then that's integrating right into neighborhood with mixed incomes. Maybe that's something, Habitat may want to start looking at because they are privately owned, but maybe incentivize those owners to give up those properties. I know that Mary's working hard on trying to do pocket parks and things like that, but this could be a real place to even do a duplex.
Yeah.
2 1-bedroom, 1-bath, little efficiency studios with, no garage or 2 garages in the middle, something like that, and utilize those properties that way, get them back on the tax roll.
Yeah, we have a program coming up where we're developing, and it'll go before the commissioners of incentives to sell those and forgiving taxes and forgiving liens on it. So we'll present that so that those lots could become available. Sunid, you had a question?
Well, I just wanted to help out because she was asking about the map. Commissioner, I spoke to Real Property today, and what they were saying, they are putting together this map. It's a lot of work, like you were saying, because they have over 8,000 properties that they're trying to identify and where they are, but they are making some headway on it. And he was saying that, and this goes to one of the questions that were in our slide, what happens is that once they get through, and there's a backlog in our county county attorney's office of actually having these properties ready to go forward to be offered. But he says they do get offered up to our different departments first, and community dev would be one that it gets offered to in order for us to see, does this property make sense for the uses that we'd like to do? And then it would be surplus later. But it makes me want to connect the dots with what we just said was, how about having a conversation with our properties that we know that we have and other properties with that, whether it be nonprofits or whether it be private, and having that conversation on where would we put it on a larger map.
Right.
So again, I'm trying to connect the dots for this plan, and I'm wondering if we can make sure that we include, along with the publicly available lands and surplus, that we also say we recommend that all the land that the county owns is mapped and considered, through the appropriate channels of whether or not it could be used for housing, and also talking to our partners at the school board and Pasco Hernando. Let's put that all in the report.
I think that will help politically as well, because then I think all the commissioners will be able to look and see what's in their district and already have a jump start on what they're thinking and what direction they may want to go with those certain properties. So we can sort of circle around and show the incentive that way.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, my experience has been that communities that do that with identified properties that are mapped, Marcy, do quite well and have less NIMBYism.
Yep.
Yeah.
He said there's less NIMBYism on these kind of publicly owned properties, is what I kind of gathered from what he said. And that they can go through the process quickly.
More quickly, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that idea.
Jimmy?
Looking at the last few tax deed sales, it looks like the county's constantly taking back vacant land. So why not put that land to work instead of just keep building the bank of land?
Right.
So I wanted to take everybody back real quick to the incentives and see if we can get kind of a consensus going forward on what you'd like in the report. I'll prepare a draft report for our public hearing, which is next, or the two weeks from today. And if you guys have any suggestions for changes or anything like that.
I like the incentives, but I would like to see us add the tax credits that Jimmy was talking about as well.
Is that something we would do, or is that a state program?
It could be private.
I'm used to the state program.
Yeah,
It could be private.
that's a state.
It's also private too. Like we did 3 of them with Warren Buffett, and it decreased our debt service by 1/3 just by using tax credits. He was the investor for the tax credits, so it wasn't through the government. And his incentive was he made about a 20% per year internal rate of return on his money that he gave to us. And all we have to do is stay in compliance. There's a sheet of compliance issues. Say you got to have so many affordable housing units, but ours worked a little differently. For about 15 years was ours, and we get fine.
I also know that there's, and I'm hoping that Mark might be able to jump in, is there's the more competitive tax credits, which are the 9%, but then there's the less competitive, which is 4% that comes from the state, and that are easier to get. And I'm also, wondering how the Housing Finance Authority could work with anything with issuing bonds, which might be helpful.
I know from my experience in Tennessee, the 9% are very competitive, but you really need those to do new development. The 4% can work with rehabs, I think, but it's just not feasible, I don't think, from what my experience was, to do 4% and try to build unless you have a lot of other funding sources.
Jimmy?
The IRS has given us incentives, 1031 exchanges, economic opportunity zones, and then there's tax credits. many don't want to look into because they think it's very complicated, but that should be looked into. I think it's the future, especially for affordable housing.
Yeah,
It's one of
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mark.
I also think making sure that there's a collaborative effort with the Pasco Housing Authority is critical.
You're talking about the idea of putting in vouchers, having vouchers for making sure that there's an income flow.
Yeah, I mean, because the operational budgets are the ones that crush developments typically in affordable.
Okay, so going back then on our incentive strategies, get back to the beginning here. Yep, I lost it, sorry. I went the wrong way, sorry. Thanks, Todd. So right now in place, we have the processing and expediting permitting. Are there any changes anybody wants to make to that strategy?
Hey, this is Mike Sutton. I have a quick question around that. My understanding is the idea would be to remove the 10-day turnaround on that. Is that correct?
Marcy, can you answer?
No, we wouldn't. We want to continue. Are you saying to make it faster? We just don't want to change it.
What I read was that what the group is looking to do is to change the processing time for single family permitting, which it currently says it's reduced from 21 days to 10, but that the county's looking to remove the I can never say that word, of the approximate 10 days to be replaced by a more definitive time frame. Or is the goal to be more specific around the 10 days?
Sonny, do you know where that language even came from?
So basically what I'm hearing you say, Mike, is that the program that we already have in place right now expedites that from 21 days to 10 days. And I think what Jeff is saying these are programs that we already do have in place. So do we want to keep this program in place? And my guess would be yes, we want to do it faster at 10 days than 21.
No, I understand that, but Mike, you're presenting some information that we are not familiar with.
It's on the Pasco County website that it says that you guys are aiming to remove the approximate 10 days to be replaced by a more definitive time frame and seek to ensure adherence to stated policy.
Where on that website?
Is that on our community development website?
Correct. I'll throw the link.
We'll have to look at that then.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely look at that and see. I know permitting is slammed, I think. So they're working as quick as they can. But this incentive is in place for either single family or multi. And we provide a letter, community development does, for the project to get expedited. So we definitely don't want to, I don't think want to make any changes to it unless it's to speed it up.
So the idea is to remain. The idea would be to keep the 10 days in place at a minimum, correct?
Yes, correct. We would want to probably keep this incentive where it's at.
Okay.
And so the second one is the waiver of mobility fees. That's already in place as well for those with incomes under the 80% of the SHIP guidelines. Any comments on this? This is in place for single family and multi. Any changes, comments, improvements?
I was just, thinking in terms of, has it been identified what is the capability of Pasco County growth? Do we know how much more can we grow? and the impact on our local resources, because we can go crazy on affordable housing left and right, and what is going to be the impact on water and how much green space do we have? Are we going to end up overbuilding the county where perhaps, we're going to be?
I think that's, I mean, the population is predicted to just skyrocket, I know, in the next 20 years. And so that's something that the long-range planning would work on and before approvals are given. Sunid, you want to comment? Yeah.
Well, mostly because it's been said, right? Demographics wise, we are scheduled to grow more. What does that all mean? I think once we look at our numbers we're supposed to come out this month, we haven't seen them. Once we look at our census numbers, we'll have a better idea of where we're going. And we're about to have our studies the next year, our studies of how our county actually looks right now and where do we have room for growth, so we can see if it's actually aligning or not.
Good. Yes.
So the allowance of the flexibility in densities for affordable housing. Again, there was no recommendation or anything in place that we've been able to tell on this incentive.
So this is the one that I would come before you as a commission and ask that you support the work of long-range planning to review this, to review the policies to allow for more flexibility for density for affordable housing. Literally you would say you support the work of long-range planning to review the policy to allow for density for flexibility and density for affordable housing or for mixed income that include housing.
This is Jeff. I'd like to add a little something here. I agree with Marcy. So Kelly, back to your question, where's the market? How can what we're doing here, in my opinion, and tell me if I'm looking at this wrong, but by evaluating these policy changes and thinking about these things, what we're doing is we're creating opportunity for the market to come in and do something different. Because right now, the way everything's set up is we're not getting the housing that we need. And so we're trying to make changes so that the market can come in and facilitate that. So, that's how I'm looking. So I think any changes we can make to the code that make it easier for people to develop this housing, such as these density flexibilities, I think is absolutely necessary if that's our goal. And for example, I did work in Texas. So, in Houston, there's no zoning. So you can build whatever you want on your land. So, you'll be driving down the road and there's a plant and then there's multifamily and then there's a shopping center. And so, here in Florida, we're in a state where we have our planning and central planning and zoning, and we're told what we can do. So by working with the zoning and making these changes, we're actually giving the market more opportunity to get in there and do what the market does. So the more flexibility we can give people, the more opportunity we're going to have development. At least that's the way I look at it.
Great. Anyone else? Would you like me to go ahead and include this in the draft report?
I would think we would need a motion on that.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to include that in the report?
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
A second.
Does anybody have any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Okay, we'll include that, and I'll try to get that draft report out to you in the next day or so. And we'll have that for the public hearing then.
Great.
The next one is the allowance of the ADUs, basically. And I would think we kind of want to kind of stay on the same path as we are with the flexible densities. So if somebody wants to make a motion that we include long-range planning and continue to work on getting this into the code.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, let's include that.
Okay, the next one is the reduction of parking and setback requirements. I think there's a little bit that was in this before. Discussion on whether you guys would like to change this, keep it the same, anything like that.
I have a question. So, seems like it should be, isn't it kind of expensive to go through the alternative standards route? So why not make that kind of automatic so they don't is there a way we can make that less costly? I mean, because I think that's a no-brainer.
Commissioner, we could certainly include that as part of our report and recommendation, the AHAC, if you want to include that, to work to make parking and setbacks more flexible for affordable housing development. I think, is that a good way to word that, Marcy?
Oh, okay, so okay, so these are all bullet points underneath that statement. Okay.
Correct. These are things that can currently be done. But if you want to include something that would make it more flexible, we're absolutely good with that.
Yeah, I want to find a way to reduce costs so it's easier, since we know all these things are good.
I think, Commissioner, I agree with you. Because even the idea of going before having a public hearing is a cost each time. So.
And you can get caught up in the NIMBY part every time you go.
Yeah. So maybe it's a staff determination, not a county commission determination.
We already said it was the planning commission, though. That's why
still,
I asked that.
they're still.
Right. That's why I asked that question.
I heard you ask
earlier.
that question, yeah.
And also, I don't know if it applies here 100%, maybe it does. I love everyone's opinion, but there's different types of demographics in this affordable housing, from 80%, MI people that are working to people that are on subsidy, people that are homeless or just out of homelessness, disabled, living conditions, all these different types of people that are in affordable housing. And there's a lot of them that just don't have cars. A lot of these demographics, people just don't have cars. The affordable housing manager would have a van on site and take people to appointments and things of that nature. And I'm talking, I guess this is more of the multifamily style, but just wanted to throw that out there to let you know that not every type of affordable housing resident even has cars.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, Jeff. And I think our demographic is, changing so much here in Pasco as well. We're becoming more urbanized, becoming more walkable community. People are gearing themselves more towards that lifestyle. Like, if you lived in New York City, you never owned a car. People would live there for 50 years and never, ever own a car. So, I mean, there is that generation that's coming up too that, likes that type of lifestyle. So we should be able to have that type of housing where we can get places without a vehicle.
So if I worded it such as each project will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis for setback relief.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that it's the setback so much as it's the parking.
I'm sorry, the parking and the setback. I missed that.
Yeah. And the parking and does that encompass the transit stop different distance from a transit stop?
I would include that too.
It could be anything, right? So it could be if they say instead of automobile parking, we're gonna put in improved bike parking, and that would be a way that you can also, so it doesn't necessarily have to be near a transit stop.
I wanted to bring out something too that I had mentioned to Mike Sutton, and I'm going to bring it up here again because I don't think it's happening, and I think it's a good thing. And, this is when you have smaller lots. We did this in Longleaf. Rather than putting the house in the middle of a lot and you get unusable side yards, you site the house to one side of the lot. And on that side, you have what's called privacy side manor. So they're higher windows, a bathroom window, the closets, the laundry, whatever. And then, you get the full use of the yard space. And it, you need to have fencing, preferably, but this gives people with small lots a much more usable yard. And it's called privacy side manors, and it works great in Longleaf. And I think on these smaller lots, it's a much better way to go. So I would want to encourage that somehow here, if possible.
I think that's a great idea.
Somewhere.
Okay. Hey, Commissioner, that would also potentially allow ADUs.
Right.
Yeah.
So does somebody want to do a motion on this one? To approve, or that it would be, affordable housing projects would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis for relief from parking and setback requirements?
But would that be from say evaluated and approved by staff? Can we go that far and not?
I think that's the case. So I think when they're talking, so I think the first two are by staff. But if they go into the others, then they require the hearings. Am I reading that right, Cindy?
You're reading it correctly. I think it's when we start looking at setbacks require going before the board. And then when we start talking about.
Aren't we making recommendations that maybe that be changed?
Yes, so you're saying just completely eliminate going before the board and both setbacks and parking be a staff decision.
If that's part of our, I don't know, someone playing devil's advocate here, where would that be a bad thing?
Well, I think it could err on the side of, too much control in one place if they don't have all the information. And now you're only talking about the developer and staff. And if you've got somebody who's right next door, I know it's a NIMBY thing, but they may have something to say. So if you eliminate that public forum, you could get yourself legally caught.
I certainly think you could reduce maybe the public hearing to one.
Yeah.
And, staff could make a recommendation that project would be approved and those variances could be approved. And then it would be subject to the final public hearing of the Planning Commission or something like that.
So I guess my other question would be would there be an opportunity for flexibility on setbacks or setback variances to be considered with the rewrite? And I'm wondering if we put it in that category, because since we know that there's going to be a rewrite, do we say that, do we separate the two? We say reduction of parking can be considered on a case-by-case basis with staff approval, and the commission, the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, recommends that when it comes to setback variances for affordable housing, that those be considered within the rewrite of the code, because then it would, to make it more, require less approval, require streamlined in the land development code rewrite.
Yeah. I'll make that motion.
Can I have a second?
Are you laughing at the way that?
No, I don't have my writing. I'm trying to think those days.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anyone opposed? Okay. Got it.
And this probably goes to your comment a minute ago, Commissioner, about the next one is the flexible lot configuration, zero lot lines, those sort of things.
Yeah.
So do we want to go ahead and that we would recommend flexibility in this?
Yes.
So again, we don't want everybody to have to come through an MPUD.
Right.
So, I'm wondering, is there another way to do that? To look at the different lot configurations? Is it again a rewrite or is it go on?
You shook your head.
Oh, I was in my own world. However, I will say, when it comes to duplexes, the duplexes are able to use the zero lot line, depending on where they are. That one it just requires a special exception on that one. But for anything else, that would be, I think that would be when we start to reconsider our lot sizes in our rewrite, because that's going to be, well, hopefully sooner than later. But if not, I think that would be something that we can put in the just recommendations and just recommendation that we do review how our lot sizes are and our setbacks within them, and proposing it then. I still don't think the MPUD is the best route.
I don't think it's a route. I don't think it's an option at all. So I think that there's a balance between supporting what's being done, recommending, and then sort of just is it going to happen or isn't? So the point of flexible lot configurations, I'm thinking, is as much to what I said about inclusionary zoning and sizes of units, right? Because if you can get your lot size down and have a more density or a different configuration, then you could perhaps get more units in, and so you reduce your costs. So again, whatever we're doing to increase our affordable housing inventory and decrease the costs to make that happen is what we're looking to do. But I don't see this happening in any other way than with a total kind of rewrite and look at the process. I would say for this one and that we would group a couple of these things together and say that we know that the county is going through a rewrite and looking, and so we, in order to increase affordable housing in our community, we are recommending that you look at these things as incentives. So I would put it that way instead.
Could we add that to the previous one where we had the setbacks and just say including setbacks and zero lot lines?
Yeah,
and
it makes more sense.
Would you amend your motion?
Yeah, I'll amend my motion to include this sentence into the previous sentence or bullet point,
With the
whatever you want
setbacks
to call
and
it.
the
Previous strategy.
Strategy.
And who had the second on that? Was that you, Jeff?
Yeah.
Will you amend your second?
I amend my second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this topic? Okay. All those in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
And the next one is the modification of street requirements for affordable housing, and that is also part of the rewrite, I guess.
I think that this one is just too complicated.
This one just stands aside. Okay.
Really rough.
Okay. And you also obviously have the option to make no recommendation either for or against, just nothing.
Okay. Does anybody have a motion to just let that one out, or we want to include it? I'm thinking we're opening up a huge can of worms with this one. especially since Sunita had already described to us that, we're looking at everything from arterial roads to collector roads to dirt roads to federally funded roads. Yeah, we're just all over the place. Do we need a motion for that, or we just say we don't want it?
I would say just make a motion there. The committee makes no recommendation.
Okay. Jessica, will you make that motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Does anybody have any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
The establishment of a process by which the local government considers before adoption any policies, procedures, ordinances, regulations, or plan provisions that increase the cost of housing. And I think this one is already pretty much ongoing. So if you want to just continue this, to make that recommendation that we continue on reviewing.
Can I get a recommendation? Okay, I think I saw Jeff's lips move, even though his mute was on. Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
This one is the supportive development near transportation hubs and major employment centers and mixed-use developments. Anyone want to discuss that?
Well, I like that. I mean, I really think it should be located, not out in the middle of nowhere. I think that once we get that map and we start to take a look at, where things are located, it'll be easier for us to see the transportation hubs and employment centers, mixed-use developments, and make a better educated decision of where to put them. But it's important to have that.
I can give a little bit of input. I agree with everything you just said. So I look at land all over the state of Florida, and some is very urban, and some is suburban, some is rural, and the need is everywhere. We can support. I would say yes, we need to support development near transportation hubs and major employment centers and mixed-use developments and all that stuff. And comprehensive plan does that. I guess it does guide, but if we have the opportunity to put affordable housing, anywhere, I may be Captain Obvious right now, but I think we should support it anywhere that we can get it funded.
Yeah, I agree, as opposed to, definitely support it everywhere.
Yeah,
but
focusing on these areas.
As a guide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, okay, supportive what kind of development?
Affordable housing.
Well, should we say that here? Because we don't say that here.
Oh, yeah.
And so it could be.
Yeah, you're right.
Or even how to support it.
Right. How to support it. Are we financially supporting it? Are we saying, yay, that's what we want? Okay, so we're saying we are in support, yay.
The comprehensive plan attempts to guide and encourage development in these corridors. So are we saying that we agree that that should continue to happen?
Yes, that's what this statement says. We are in support of the comprehensive plan to put affordable housing development near transportation hubs
And employment centers.
Yeah, we just need to put that affordable housing in there, that's all.
And I think we should, this is a nice way of saying that this is what we would like to do. I think one thing that we probably want to add on is who should be at the table when they're doing these considerations. So if we're talking about the transportation hubs, I think we should have PTCBT at the table talk about where they plan on having said ones.
Yeah, get the stakeholders there for sure, whenever staff is making those decisions. If that's one of the things that we want to, have be criteria or a point of reference, then I agree. PCPT should be involved. Okay, so we're in support of the comprehensive plan. We're going to change this to say affordable housing. Does somebody want to make that motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
it.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay,
And then this goes back to our land bank or land trust discussion, as well as the map. So this is kind of the wording that's in there now.
and Sunid, you already said they're in preparation of this said map already? We're just waiting for a little bit more specifics?
They're putting it together.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they just got the person that is working on it, on staff, and
Great. So we are in support of preparation of a printed map of inventory of all of that.
Yeah, I would say something like Pasco County has a listing of surplus properties, and we encourage a preparation of a map of all the properties. We'll just add that language to it.
Yep. And a motion on that, please?
So moved.
And I have a second, please.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
And those are basically the strategies. You can also include other activities and strategies as you desire. So that brings up the inclusionary zoning, if that's something you want to consider.
I think we, when we're talking about the density bonuses and things like that, we're taking that first step. So since, I don't know, I guess I'm concerned about putting this in because there's been no conversation on that. So I think that by putting it, some of the elements in other parts of it, I think we might be better off. I'm not sure where we would put this in. As it's really not required. I'd rather start with the housing plan and start with the things that we discussed that is possible in the county.
I tend to agree with you on that wholeheartedly, actually. I think that we may be going down a slippery slope and a little too far, Jeff. Yep.
Okay, we will prepare the draft report and get that out to everybody. Just as a reminder, it'll be a public hearing to approve that report. I'll send it to Marcy, let her review it first, and then get it out to you guys. The public hearing will be Tuesday the 13th, and we'll go ahead and get notice sent out for all that. Is there any other strategies or discussions you guys want to have with us as staff?
So our next meeting isn't the 13th, it's the county meeting. So I've got April 13th down here as our next meeting, but you're saying that's when we go in front of the board?
No, that'll be, the AHAC has to hold a public hearing itself
See, I understand.
to vote on the recommendations in the report.
That's the 13th.
That's the 13th, yes, ma'am. And then we'll submit the report to the county in either May or June for approval to be effective 7/1.
Okay.
And I'll let you go back.
Okay, so thank you both very much. Very informative presentation. Going to kind of go around. Does anybody online here have any final comments? Jeff, I see your face first. Do you want to add anything?
Well, I've been trying to think since earlier conversation. I do have a market rate friend of mine. I was in market rate for many, many years before I got into affordable, and so I still stay in contact with these guys. And he actually tried to put a plan together over in Central Florida and work with the county with some land, and put together a pro forma by which he might be able to provide a property that had, 80% to 100% AMI units without getting any subsidies or whatever from the federal government or whatever, just working with the local government. And I'm going to ask before, I guess I'm not presenting the meeting. I'm going to ask and see if he'll give me a copy of that, and I'll try and work one for Pasco County and just share it with everybody so we can see what might need to happen if we want to try and make that work. For a market rate guy to come in and developer to come in and what would they need to make the numbers work. So just thought I might be able to provide that resource. I'm going to try to.
Okay, Crystal, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Not at this time, other than thank you. I appreciate everyone's having dedication to affordable housing and on this committee. So thank you and have a good week.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. John, do you have anything that you'd like to add? He might have stepped away. Jessica? Jimmy?
Well, I believe we have an opportunity right now because interest rates are so low to take advantage of this interest rate environment while these recommendations not on any of this. For example, if you need debt service and you go to a bank and you're paying 4 to 6%, meanwhile, if the county is able to issue tax-free bonds or give permission to any developer to issue a tax-free bond, which the rates are probably 1 to 2%. So you could save a lot off of debt service, and that's without any tax credits involved or with them. We've done it together. We've done it.
Good. Commissioner, anything from you?
No, I'm just so excited to be a part of this and looking forward to our report and comments by our fellow commissioners.
Are you?
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. Staff, anything to add?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Nope, she said no.
Thank you all. Appreciate your
Thank you.
advocacy.
Yes.
All right, well, with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.